Hello, I'm Aspicis, and I'm here as your host from the Conclave of Aratar, bringing you some community information to help you decide on where you want to settle yourself within our ranks. Now, we hold these casts every Wednesday at 8 Eastern, Sundays at 4 Eastern, and I encourage you to join in Twitch to discuss the topics of the interview. For those of you new to the channel, we're a community gathered around the upcoming game, The Chronicles of Elyria, a game in development by Soulbound Studios. If you're interested in learning a little bit more about this upcoming game, there's a link below to take you to their website. Like mentioned earlier, we, the members and hosts of Face the Conclave, hail from the Conclave of Artar. The Conclave of Artar is a duchy within the Kingdom of Vornair, and we're going to be introducing you to some members of our community and discussing some topics about our community and about the game The Chronicles of Elyria. Joining us this week as guests are Count Thomas Farrister and Lord Aedyn Wolfgar. You mind saying hello, you two?
Hello, everyone, and thank you for having us.
Hello and good afternoon, and likewise, thank you for having us.
Yeah, so on Face the Conclave here, we're trying to give you two an opportunity to tell us, the community, about the area, the people you are, the leadership styles you embody, what you're excited about in terms of gaming, and what people can expect when they come into your counties, your areas of influence. With that in mind, we're going to ask you a series of questions, things that are indicative of those questions I mentioned earlier, the games that you've played and what you look for, what you like, the things that you are intending to be and do in the Chronicles of Elyria as a game. Um, we've talked a little bit earlier about what we are going to expect here. And so we're going to start this off with just a short little question about your gaming background, about the games you've played, about the things that you guys have done, and what interests you about gaming, what hooked you in, I guess, to start out with. So if you mind starting out, tell us a little bit about the games you've played in the past, how you came up with your different aliases, those sort of things. If you want to start, Thomas.
Yeah, sure. It's a longer history than I care to admit to. I've been gaming for probably around 20 years in various different guises. I think the types of games that I've played has actually changed over that time. So I started out as a youngster, very much on the Twitch type FPS games, the Quakes and then the Counter Strikes, and then it moved on really to the strategy type games, and then more as online gaming came into its own, more into the online communal games. I really enjoy interacting with other people. Um, I think for me as well, I don't want to take too much away from Aedyn's section, but we've probably been gaming together for about 4 years. I joined a community that he was running at the time, and I get on really well with Aedyn. Hopefully, he would say the same. But we have quite similar interests in the kind of games that we play. So we like things from city building to RPGs to some strategy games to some simulation type games. So I think we enjoy quite similar things, but I think what's interesting, which hopefully will come out over the course of this interview, is we have quite different interests even within those games. So although we've got the same sort of genre interests, there's still a little bit of diversity into that. Aedyn, I don't know if you'd add anything to that.
No, I think that's been a pretty interesting thing as we originally met over a past community, and that kind of grew into something that I don't think either of us originally expected when I kind of gave you the initial interview of when you were joining in and signing up, and it's kind of grown into like, wow, we're actually kind of very similar people, but we're separated by a big ocean in the middle. So yeah.
Interesting, yeah. So you mentioned something in there that I wanna I guess elaborate on here. So Ferrister, you're a count holder. You have land in Elyria. Aedyn, you I don't remember what your package is. Are you a mayor or are
That
you?
is correct, yes.
Yep.
In between, we haven't between Farrister and I, we haven't decided whether I would be officially a baron or just a mayor. That's kind of in the air between right now. But yeah, I am a mayor package holder.
Gotcha, mayor. Well, yeah, a package holder. I like how you said that. Um, Yeah, so what I noticed there is young Farrister here, not necessarily new to the world of gaming, but came into an area where you were the head honcho, and now it seems the tables have turned a degree, such that the student has learned from the master, and he's taken a step to a larger leadership. Does this doesn't lead into any conflict between you two, like no resentment over the growing admiration over Senior Thomas here?
Oh
I
no, not at least not for me. There is none there. No, I'll Thomas, you can go ahead and see if there's anything that I maybe haven't heard about. Let's see.
Well, I actually hope there is a little bit. So I think to be fair, in most of the games that we play, I think we could either one of us could probably take the lead, and it probably would be different depending on what time you're logged in, etc. So I think this county is an absolute partnership. So even though I hold the count title, frankly, any major decisions we will be consulting on anyway. And actually, because of the time zone difference, I think you'll find that I'm a count between certain hours, and the other hours, Aedyn is the count. I think one of the interesting things that I mentioned earlier was, although we've got similar interests, we have got a slightly different style and way of doing it. And I think for me, actually, that creates a little bit of conflict. I hope in a healthy way. We still get on really well with each other. But actually, in the county context, that's really, really interesting because it creates variety between our two settlements. I think it also creates variety in the way that we will go about and run things. So I think, particularly when we've been talking, Aedyn, I think there is going to be situations where we don't agree. But for me, that creates a really interesting and compelling story for the people that visit or live in our county.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm kind of all jokes aside that we do have different styles. I think I'm a little bit more, especially just professionally, I'm in a more of a creative field, and Thomas is in more of an analytical field. And then I think that's kind of somewhat how our brains and personalities work. So there is, you can almost say that it's kind of like we're two sides of the same coin almost, where we have a lot of similar interests, but our brains and our kind of leadership styles also do work in different ways. But I think that those mesh well together.
Now I'm going to pick up that coin really quick. So I look at this coin right here, and the first thing I notice is it's got the word Farrister on there. You mentioned there's some conflict, and that's healthy, that's good. But you're still able to work together, and I think that one of the first things, maybe not the first thing, but one of the things that, at least in terms of Illyria, that you work together on is, you decided on that name Farrister. I don't know if the name Farrister came from a previous game, or if you guys decided it as a new endeavor together in terms of a surname. And can you guys elaborate into how you together came up with Farrister and what the roots of that are?
Well, I think that was actually a great example of the point we've just been making. So we knew that we wanted to be family in game. We knew that would create some interesting stories. I think we've already seen that to some extent when we've played things like Crusader Kings 2 together. I think those joint family ties make for some really interesting gameplay situations. But actually, again, we were both looking for slightly different things from a surname. So you'll notice that where once the surname selector for Chronicles of Elyria came out, I opted to secure that Farrister name. We've actually opted for slightly different variants on it here, with Aedyn taking the more Brudvir sounding, the northern sounding name. So I think this was a really, really interesting example of where we've both got a slightly different direction, with me favouring perhaps the more anglicised, the almost more Neran element of the language, and Aedyn going for the much harder, Northern Brudvir type sounding name. And again, I think that's really, really interesting for the tale of our county. I know that we've not really got on too much to the lore of things yet, but actually that's quite telling in itself. So I think the process that we went through was, as Aedyn discussed, he is the more creative. I'm quite happy to accept that. And I think we brainstormed a few different name possibilities, and probably you gravitated more towards one set of names and I gravitated more towards the other set of names. But again, I think that just adds to the flavour of how life is going to be in our county.
Do you have anything you'd like to add in there? I've got a little tail end onto our gaming history and gamer tag, but I want to give you the chance there, Aiden.
No, no, I think he really pretty much covered all of that there. It is basically he kind of covered it there. He is a little bit more of the Anglo side, and I kind of gravitate more towards, I would say, the old, more like Norse influences and kind of the way that the obviously this is a fantasy world, but there are things you can parallels you can draw from our real world and our real history, and that's just kind of where our personalities kind of are more gravitated towards.
Yeah, life mirror fantasy. I like that.
Exactly.
And you guys both mention in the slides you prepared for me, realism towards lore, lore friendly like things. Do you guys have a history of engaging in role playing like activities, or is that something you hope to develop in the Chronicles of Elyria?
I think
For
one
me,
for you, Aiden.
yeah, for me personally, I don't do a whole lot of actual what you might call like a tabletop role playing game, but especially with the previous community that I was leading and taking part in, we had a very big focus on what I would call immersion. So we've had a lot of things that were themed and tried to be rooted in the lore and the world that was created by that game that it was focused around. And I think I try and bring that same mentality to Chronicles of Elyria, where because they are creating a a very rich world, and they are having this big focus on having allowing people to have an immersive experience if they want it. I mean, you don't have to. You don't have to engage in things like role playing if you don't want to, but it's there if you want it. And I think embracing that passion that the developers are putting into the game makes it a more engaging experience for the people that are going to be either visiting our county that we're growing with other people, or permanently like playing in that when they're actually in the game. So um, actual like what you might call tabletop role playing would be something that I've always had a curiosity in it, and I've never had a big group to, especially locally, to kind of go in and engage with. So it's not something that I've really delved into previously, but it's something that it's kind of always kind of like at the back of my mind and something that I might want to get into in the future.
And I think it's an example of where we're two sides of a similar coin but different sides. So I've probably shied away from the role playing element of things a little bit more in the past. It's not really something that appeals to me quite so much. But what really does appeal to me is the idea of a story. So I think for us, it's about for our family, for our settlements, for our county, what is the story? And that really, really appeals to me. So I think it's a really, really good example of actually where we've probably got similar interests but a different approach to it.
Yeah, and just to add on to that real quick, story is a huge factor when I want to play games. Like I will play a bad game that has poor mechanics or isn't rough around the edges. But if the story is extremely well developed or well written or engaging to me for whatever reason, I'm more than willing to look past the shortcomings that the actual game mechanics have, so that way I can experience that story, whether it's something that's kind of multiplayer or adventure based, or if it's like an RPG. So we do have that tying together between Thomas and I, where we do love this kind of interesting and engaging stories.
And I like what you brought up there, Wolfgar. You talked about immersion. I brought up role play, and a lot of times, listeners, viewers, and our guests here, you jump to role play and you think you're stereotypical D&D. You think of things like LARPing, or, if for those of you on the adult side, role play. Um, but role playing and the idea of role playing in video games a lot of times comes down to, like you said, immersion. If you ever watch, say, the Lord of the Rings documentary, the behind the scenes basically, and you see the amount of detail, Lord of the Rings, any fantasy, any well done movie, and you look at the details that they put in, that is the role playing in
Yeah.
the gaming world. It is the things that add value, the things that thresh out the gamers. We contribute to a lot of the role play, a lot of the immersion inside a game world. The developers definitely contribute towards a lot of the role play, a lot of the immersion into a game world. And being responsible with that, I think is a very important aspect to hold from a leadership standpoint. So I to wrap up and let us get on to
Yeah,
leadership
yeah.
and
Just
stuff.
as an aside, because you brought it up, I think maybe there's a little bit of an influence why I'm so into game immersion, and it's probably because as a younger version of Aiden, I watched those Lord of the Rings dependencies countless times about how they made those films. So just throwing that out there.
You know, and they're wonderful if you've never been able to watch the extended
Yeah.
content on the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit videos.
I think even some of them have made their way onto YouTube and not been taken down. So if you haven't seen them, just give them like Lord of the Rings appendices, quick search on YouTube, and you might get a couple of them.
Conclave does not support searching for copyrighted content on YouTube.
Which is true, but check them out. Um, yeah. The so immersion is extremely important, and individuals shouldn't necessarily be taken back by the idea of immersion as role play. Role play is immersion, and that doesn't mean that you're necessarily adopting a completely different persona. It just means that you're saying, I exist in the world of Elyria. This is what Elyria is, and I behave like I'm in Elyria. And that I think there's a lot of value. Anyway, we were talking about, or we were transitioning towards leadership and leadership ideas and what leadership means. The next question we want to ask you to is, a question about, what the leadership principles, the leadership ideals, how do they guide your decision making? When I say leadership, what do you think? And those sort of things. Aiden, if you would start off on this section here, when I say leadership, you say.
Oh, sure. Well, I mean, leadership to me is I take a bit more of a being someone that facilitates kind of the group that you are leading. So, obviously, you need to have like one of my main points here would be a willingness to listen. So, if you're not listening to the people that you are supposed to be, quote, leading, then you're serving your own self-interest, which that worked back in the day when the feudal system was actually a thing, but society has moved on past that, and being someone that tries to make sure that everyone who's in your community, whether it be our smaller county community or in the conclave, or whether it be the kingdom, being someone that kind of engages with the people that are there and making sure that not only are they having a good time, but that the things that they want to do are being things they want to do in game are being facilitated. And so part of that is also leading through the actions that the way that your character behaves in game. So if you're saying, okay, yeah, here's all of the goals for our county, okay, all of the people that live here, you go do that, and I'm going to do nothing. That's not being a leader to me. Someone who is actually a leader is also going to be engaging and being a driving force for those goals. If you as the leader can't put forth the effort to go and try and achieve those goals, then why should any of the people who you're supposed to be leading go and do that? But also on the flip side of that, you should be trying to make sure that not only it's not just up to you to do everything. You should be trying to make sure that other people who are within the community should be able to be empowered to also go and do these whatever activities it might be, or whatever goals that the county or the duchy is trying to achieve. If there is an invading force, for instance, and hopefully we won't have to deal with that because we're a little bit off the front lines, and our county is hopefully going to be pretty well defended because that's kind of what our thing is. But if, let's say it were, it shouldn't be up to myself or Thomas to go and give every single order for the defense of the county. We should have people in place that are going to be empowered to make those decisions. Because what if we're not around? Like mentioned earlier, Thomas and I are both in different time zones, which hopefully allows us to make sure that a lot of the time someone is around to make sure it's covered if we're absolutely needed. But at the same time, you want to make sure that other people are empowered to feel like that they can also take part and have some sort of ownership of the community, if that makes sense. And then as part of that, you want to make sure that not only are people empowered to kind of go out and take a charge or ownership of a project or a goal or something, but you want to make sure that those people are supported, and they're not trying to scramble to see if they can't find people to come help them, or there's no support behind what they're doing. If there's support behind what they're doing in a sense that the leadership of the duchy or the county approves, but then there's no follow through. In other words, no one is, following up on, hey, how is your project going? Do you need any help with something? Things like that. So there's a whole lot of, I take a very community based approach to what leadership is, and making sure that the people that are spending their time with you, their gaming time with you, they could be spending that gaming time, anywhere. There are lots of different communities or many duchies or whatever it might be that they could go and join. And it should be a leader should be able to take the choice that they are spending their time here in your community as a big compliment that they want to do that. And you should be, supportive of the people that are there and spending their time with you and in your county, or in this case, in your county, but it might be, whatever it might be.
Interesting. Yes. No. Inclusive leadership. Like
Yes.
that's a good point to make. Thomas, when I say leadership, you say.
I'll start by saying that I agree with everything that Aedyn has just said. I think a really, really great summary. And actually, having known you for 4 years, if it helps, my friend, I would definitely say that you embody those values. I think for me, I think the things that I would add as slightly different, or perhaps that's slightly different between our styles. I think I would add that for me, leadership facilitates achieving more as a team. So if I take, for example, the current Searing Plague event for Chronicles of Elyria, if you're not into it, Google it. It's a great opportunity for new players to actually get into finding out a little bit more. Initially, players would start out collecting seals and then progress through different tiers and different roles. Now, if everybody plays an individual, then you'd have to wait for every single person to achieve that individually, which would be over the course of many, many days. But actually, through organization, I've seen a great example of this within the Conclave and within the Kingdom of Vornair. Actually, by getting one or two people through those first, you then see exponential returns. So it's actually a lot quicker to get everybody across the line by coordinating, by working together. So actually, for me, that's an example of where leadership, through working together, through organizing, helps you to achieve more or achieve things faster. And for me, that's a great example of leadership. I think a leader has to add value. To Aedyn's point earlier, I think we've seen a lot of examples in history where leaders were a bit of a leech on the success of others. And for me, actually, that is a bad leader or not a leader at all. So for me, a good leader actually adds value. They help, they enable, they help people to achieve more than they otherwise would be able to do. So I think an example for us in Chronicles of Elyria, we might have somebody approach us to say, I'm really interested in astronomy. I think I need certain building or I need certain tools to be able to achieve that. And it's something that I can't afford by myself. But actually, if I had some help from the rest of the county, there may be great benefits to the remainder of the county in terms of knowledge or in terms of economic benefits. And for me, that's a great example of actually where in a position of leadership, you can organize that support and make those things happen and ultimately unlock gameplay for individuals, but also for the community that otherwise might not exist. So for me, that would be a great example of leadership. I think probably where Aedyn and I slightly differ is I probably lean one side of the balance equation of leadership. So I probably lean slightly further towards being decisive. And Aedyn, my gut feel is you probably lean slightly further towards being inclusive.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And I think our past experience leading communities is a good example where I feel like we balance each other out pretty well in that regard. And sometimes, it might be we are discussing, well, do we need to be more decisive here or should we try and be more inclusive here? And a lot of times we'll kind of come to the right decision based on that discussion and that debate between us for whatever issue or problem we're dealing with.
And I think for me, that's the opportunity for us as leading a county between us, is you make up for the deficiencies in my leadership style, and equally, I think I can help out in some of those leadership situations where we do need to be slightly more responsive. So I think we have got a balance. I think the different styles of leadership work well in different situations. But I think actually between us and our slightly different personalities, but with those common goals, I think we try and cater for everybody, and also deliver a great experience for everybody. Whether that means taking the time and being more, consultative with people, or if we need to be more responsive, I think we can do a little bit of both. So that's probably a long answer to a short question.
Yeah, and I think you've covered a lot of the things that you gave to me on your sides. Working as a team to achieve more, more from the community, more from the individual, more from yourself. And then I like what you said. Being inclusive, being decisive, and it's a balance, and that both of you sit on slightly different sides of that. While at a lot of times it is appropriate and the responsibility of a leader in a community, especially in the gaming world, to make people understand the ropes, it is sometimes also the responsibility of the leader to make those hard decisions. And recognizing both of those are good signs. I think everyone would agree. You mentioned something inside there. I think it was you, Farrister. You talked about the burning plague. I almost said the burning crusade, and Blizzard would have railed on me, but no, the searing plague, the searing plague, the searing plague. Um, Listeners, if you're tuning in right now, if you're listening to this slightly after we finish posting it, get involved with the Searing Plague event. Soulbound Studios has built and is supporting this event to include those of us who are waiting for this game in something exciting, something to perform in that will have an effect on the upcoming game. So, depending on if you want to support the cure, support the plague, and to what degree each of those succeeds and fails, we can see some pretty far-reaching ramifications reach the end game. They've discussed creating plague zones, almost like the. Now I'm thinking, wow, again, the plague lands, and that sort of thing. Something that's an area, geographically speaking, that is influenced by the events of the Searing Plague, and being able to contribute to what this game is going to be, I think is a real fun and engaging way for the community to bide our time for the game to be
Yeah.
complete.
And hey, if you're one of those people that only care about game mechanics and you're not really into the whole immersion thing, and you happen to not have purchased a game package yet, you can get one for free. So there you go.
And equally, if you are interested in game mechanics and you don't care about story or immersion or anything like that, there are actually some interesting in-game things that result for you, even if you already have a package. So basically, for anybody that is at all interested in Elyria, whether you've currently got a package, whether you don't, whether you're interested in story, whether you're interested in mechanics, worth checking out the Searing Plague event and getting involved.
Yeah, a lot of communities are have a lot of information, tell you how to get involved, how to help, how to do stuff, including the developers. So if you're interested, if your curiosity is tickled, like I said, we've got a link below that'll bring you to the Soulbound Studios, the Chronicles of Elyria site. So check that out. Back to our regularly scheduled broadcasting. So we've been talking about what leadership is. Farrister. Thomas, you're a count in the Conclave of Aratar. You've got your mayor with you, Aedyn. I want to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about the settlements, the package that you have on you guys, and what do you intend to do with them? We've talked a little bit about the different ideas on leadership in the game, the things you want to focus on, the mentalities that you promote. Um, you know, uh, in this section, I want you to focus a little bit more on the hard facts as far as with your intentions, you want to be Hrothi, you want to be Nera, and you want to be Broodvir. You brought that up a little bit. You want to be north, you want to be south, you want to be on a river, you want to be on the ocean. Those types of things. Big cities, small cities, cities with castles, cities with moats. All the different ideas that you guys have discussed with the Chronicles of Elyria. So yeah, tell us what can you tell us about your settlement, about your package, about these potential things that are going to be coming up in the Chronicles of Elyria.
Wow. So an awful lot. We've had a lot of discussions on this matter. I think I'm hopefully going to give you a flavour for what is County Farrister and a little bit about our settlements. But I'm also hoping to leave you wanting to find out a little bit more. So through all of the things that Aedyn has done in the past, he's worked really, really hard around building great stories, building fantastic lore. And I think we have the same plan for our county and both of our settlements there. I think to some extent we're going to wait till domain selection for some of that, because we're really, really keen on immersion, and we want to make sure that whatever lore we have in place really, really fits with what people will see in the game and really, really fits well to our story. Yeah. Having said that, I think we have got some thoughts about what we would like to be, some general thoughts. So I think first off, we're both builders. So we're both world builders. As I mentioned earlier, we do that in a slightly different way, which makes things interesting. But we're really, really interested in building something really interesting, an interesting county, an interesting town for people to explore, to live in, and to base their gameplay from. I think fair to say, Aedyn, we are both very, very interested in being up in the cold north, the hardy north.
Yes, we are.
So that probably lends itself more to the Broodvir Hrothi type of tribes. But I think one of the things that when we were discussing this, we're both very, very interested in is being on the change between biomes. So where biomes change, you get some very interesting situations. And I think from a story standpoint, that is offering quite a lot of opportunity for us to build into stories of potentially two different biomes or two different tribes. But also, and you'll notice that I am an elder of commerce, so I have to say it, from a mercantile standpoint, from a commerce standpoint, it also creates potentially trade between biomes of different types of resources. So I think we're very interested in that as well. I'm conscious that I have mentioned this is going to be a joint decision, so I guess I'll hand over to Aedyn to continue and chat through some of the things that we're looking to achieve.
Yeah, I think because we are both so interested in building, I think a goal for me would be kind of, obviously a lot of this depends on what the game mechanics allow us to do, but to give a kind of ultimate, this would be the best outcome possible. If you could travel to our county, and as someone who didn't live there, hadn't visited before, but you had heard people talking about it, you'd say, oh, this sounds interesting, I'm going to go and explore that. And you decide you visit and you start walking through the various roads that we've built, or you get to the county capital, which depending on how things would play out with things like domain selection and where we're at and game mechanics, could be something similar to like two sides to a big city, something like you might see with it mirrored in the actual real world, with some different styles and things. But basically, we want it to look like you are experiencing an area that was designed by a game level designer. We want to go all in with kind of details and things that are not only beautiful looking, but also very defensible. That's something that I think I probably focus on a little bit more than Farrister does. He's a little bit more, like he said, he's Elder of Commerce, and that's kind of where his focus is a little bit more on. And I harken back to kind of some days where I would enjoy strategy games and enjoyed building up this incredible defensive, whether it be like a civ. So my civilization in that game would be extremely hard to attack. in the same way, I kind of carry that style of gameplay with me today, and I would ultimately love to make our county not only extremely well traded through all of Thomas's efforts, but also extremely well defended. So not only are we hoping to have something that's very beautiful and interesting and possibly intriguing, depending on what kind of options we have with game mechanics that allow us to tell different stories within the game. But we hope that it offers a lot of different options for gameplay styles within Elyria.
And I think that for me summarizes what I think our goal for the county is. So we want it to be somewhere where people can go and see some fantastic architecture. So whether that be castles and fortifications, it might be temples, it could be libraries. I think that people should see fantastic architecture, and probably they will reflect our slightly different styles as well, which I think will create interesting things. I think because we are quite defensively focused, my equivalent would be we would aim for somewhere like high security space in Eve, right? So it's fairly safe place for people that just want to be doing non-combat roles or PvE, because we will have quite a high defensible presence, and we will be seeking law and order. So if you're a deviant, I think you can expect us to be putting a lot of effort into making sure that County Farrister is still a nice, good, safe, law-abiding place. But equally, if you are of the ilk that you're looking for opportunity, in commerce or farming, perhaps as a merchant or a scholar or a cleric, I would hope this would be a great place. But I think as well, personally, I love the architecture, but I also like hiding things in the architecture. So for people that do want to come across to Farrister County and explore our settlements, there should be hidden things to discover, hidden stories to discover. There might be hidden, places to discover. That again, I think just make it all quite an interesting place for people to come and visit.
Yeah, part of that, especially the last point there that Thomas made about exploration and finding things that might be kind of like hidden stories. Obviously, a lot of that depends on what we're allowed to do in game. But something I'd like to, we want to do a lot with what would be environmental storytelling. This is something that is done in various games to some degree, especially if it's story driven. Some games do it better than others. One that has become basically my favorite game recently, which is called Horizon Zero Dawn, does extraordinary things with environmental storytelling that don't explicitly tell you anything. You could play the game and walk past it and just have no idea that well, you may have known it was there, but had no idea what context it was. But if you spend a little time exploring and looking around the surrounding area, getting some context of an object, it actually tells you a story and kind of informs you about what had happened there in the past. So I think we want to take that same kind of mentality to the things that are being built in the county. So not only is it going to be interesting for people in our county that are building things, because you might want to hide a little interesting story or something like that in there. But it'll be interesting for people who are visiting as well, if you're kind of into that exploration or intrigue or someone who appreciates environmental storytelling.
Yeah. So I think as well, we're probably being quite low key about being active on recruitment or actively developing lore until we've gone through the domain select, because we want people that do want to join the county to be very, very clear about what it is that they are joining. And for me, I think domain select will give us that, because we'll actually be able to tell them this is the county, these are the towns, the settlements, this is where we are, this is our primary tribe, etc. So I think at that point we will be a lot more active. But equally, I think for me, given what we've just said, I think if you're a player looking for opportunities for construction or blacksmithing, if you are a merchant, I think we're going to be quite a rich county straight away, simply because of the exposition points that we've got available to invest in infrastructure, etc. But equally, personally, because I'm going to be looking to make this a place of trade, I would love to help support people who are wanting to start a business that don't necessarily yet have the resources. So I'll be looking for business partners. I think it'd be great for people that want to be innkeepers and to exchange stories about what's going on, but also farmers, animal breeders, scholars and clerics. Yep. And I think fair to say, well, probably because we are going to be quite defensively focused, we've probably also got space in the county leadership potentially for perhaps a sheriff to help us with the justice, and potentially definitely 1 or 2 barons as well.
Yep, definitely.
Now, you guys brought up something that I want to elaborate on, because you use a lot of words inside there. A lot of words. Let me tell you, so many. No, you use a lot of words inside there that, creating, building, structures, castles, moats, things that talk about, how to interact with your environment, how to modify your environment. One of the slides that you gave me, and I've thrown it up there, is about, building a story in the world, building the world around you. You brought up, Aedyn, immersive or environmental storytelling. I just finished Horizon Zero Dawn last week, actually.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah. And they do a fantastic job building that environment immersive, but not overtly so. So when you guys talk about your settlements, when you talk about your counties, and we talk about building things inside there. You've got an image there, and we haven't had this released to us, but Soulbound Studios wants to promote the idea that, like in Sims, you can create something that is your own, is highly customizable, is immersive in that way. What the image you're seeing on the screen, listeners, is a screenshot early on of what they were terming the architecture tool, I believe. But it was a tool, a widget, a sub-program that players would be able to use to create something custom, something just for them, their own manor, their own house, their own castle in the game. I assume that you two plan to take advantage of whatever creating mechanism that Soulbound releases.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, we'll be doing a deep dive into that one as soon as we're able to, I think.
I think definitely, and I think actually, if you're able just to switch to Aedyn's slide on this, I think I'm gonna steal a little bit of your thunder here, buddy, but hopefully you don't mind. I think the first thing I'd say is the quality of these slides that he's put together just shows the level of detail and the quality of the work that he can do. So if there is any teaser for the quality of what to expect in the county, I think this is a great one. I think a couple of points that I would just raise. So Spiss just mentioned that they will be releasing tools to help with architecture. I think we'll look to have quite an interesting county on day one. But actually, I think one of the real interesting things for both of us is that the architecture will change over time. Buildings don't happen overnight. They have to be designed and they have to be constructed, and they need time to build. So I think for people that regularly visit the county, seeing those changes over time will be really, really interesting. Yeah. And I think the slide here of Aedyn's just shows this is Ark Survival Evolved. This is a survival game, but actually because we're both really, really into our building, we got quite into this for a number of hours, Aedyn.
Just a few, a measly few hundred or so.
Just a measly few hundred.
Yeah.
These are some great examples of some of the architecture that Aedyn has actually pulled together. This was our most recent playthrough. There was definitely an evolution of the quality of our architecture as time went on. But even in this unmodded version of Ark, I look at those buildings that you've constructed there, Aedyn, and I can see some of them are actually rounded towers, which I remember I was the first one to drop in. I'm not being competitive, but what for me that says is really interesting is actually how we borrow from each other's styles as well. So you've taken the rounded type design that I threw in there, and you've actually put your own embellishment on it because you've put pillars around the outside of each end of the curves. So I think for me, that's going to be one of the really interesting things for visitors to County Farrister is seeing how it evolves, but also how we have our own styles, but also borrow little bits from each other. So we have got that real county feel, but also with that different cultures within the county going on as well.
Yeah, I think I think a good way to think about this might be the actual real life city, Budapest. That is two cities that are kind of combined into one. And if you can look at either side, and they have their own differences, which I think play well into our own personal differences, where I might have more of a Norse influence, or you might have more of an Anglo one, and I'm sure we'll see there'll be, oh, he did a really cool thing over there. I'm going to try and do that, but then change it a little bit to fit more with the style that I'm doing or the buildings that I'm currently building. And not only that, I think it might be very interesting to see the kind of structures that are built by other people as well. I'm kind of hoping, because both Thomas and I are so focused on creating interesting buildings and doing environmental storytelling through our architecture, that the people that come and engage in our county, that kind of rubs off on them a little bit. And so, even if they're just doing like their own blacksmithing shop, maybe they'll kind of put a little bit more embellishment into it, maybe than they may have otherwise would.
I think definitely, and I think just to build on what you've said there, I absolutely agree that that would be our aim. I think the two things that I would add is hopefully people that come to see County Farrister would actually ask us to help design buildings. I think that fits with what we absolutely want to be doing. So if people are interested in and they enjoy our work and would like some help and support to create some really interesting, as you say, environmental storytelling buildings, we'd love to do that. But I think also for people that are interested in settling in County Farrister, if you're the blacksmith that is really inspired by that, but you're really interested in just blacksmithing, but you want a shop that really fits in with the scheme, I think come and approach us and see what we can do to help. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really keen to be a business partner to people, to help support people. I think we're definitely going to need blacksmiths for all of the architecture that we've got in mind, and we don't really have a single person who is interested in blacksmithing at the moment. So I think, again, opportunities like that to work together, to work as a community and help each other out. I think we would really love to welcome those opportunities.
Come to County Farrister because they have a blacksmith spot open. Stay because Farrister gives you a free blacksmith shop. Yeah, no. So, we've talked about your gaming history. We've talked about what you guys feel about leadership and the package and the environment that you hope to achieve. I want to take a little bit of time at the end here. Thomas, you're a elder of commerce, as you've stated. Aedyn, you're a newly appointed elder of
That's right.
communication, I believe.
Yep, that's correct.
So I want to talk about your roles there for a little bit about the dreams and aspirations, what you do, what you've done, and give you a chance to spread a little bit of information so that if someone is looking for the leader of commerce, of communication, of some they have an idea. They're like, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do that within the community, the Conclave of Aratar. Who do I reach out to? I want you guys to be able to give them an example, give them some information so that if you're the person they're supposed to contact, that they know to get in contact with you. So Farrister here, you're an elder of commerce. You work with me and with our boss, High Elder Insight. Tell me a little bit about that role and your dreams for it and what that means to you.
Yeah, of course. So I actually got into this role when I joined, and there probably wasn't much around taxation and how we might work taxation in the conclave. So one of the first pieces of work that I did was just some real high level, without going into game mechanics, because we don't ultimately have those answers yet. Just what taxation might look like, and how we might manage that with the team. So one of the first documents that I pulled together was all around taxation. And since then, I have worked on all sorts. So I've become a little bit of the elder of spreadsheets. So I've worked on things from a mock domain selection, so we can work out our process for being really, really efficient with people. I've worked on pieces of work such as, what is a citizen of Aratar. I've worked with the kingdom on sharing a couple of pieces around taxes. So really, really varied. I think as we learn more about mechanics, my real focus will be on all things currency and all things tax. But naturally, we in the commerce team work really, really closely together. So ultimately, anything that I'm working on, I've got great support from Insight and from Auspices, and equally anything else that's happening in commerce. I think we work really well as a team and chat through those. I think for anybody who's looking to know more about basically anything to do with economics within the Duchy of the Conclave of Aratar, I think reach out to myself, Count Thomas Farrister. I think Insight is really, really open and welcoming. So hi, Elder Insight Karanis, and equally Auspices, who is very, very kindly hosting us on this 360 of the Conclave. Again, I'm sure you would welcome people reaching out to you as well.
Yeah, the whole team. If you have economy questions, economics, how do I fit in the micro or macro spheres? Definitely reach out to us. Yeah, when you started talking, Farrister, about taxation initially and currency and all this other stuff in the Duchy Discord. You hail from the small islands over England, Ireland, Scotland, all those, and the thing that I always got a kick out of, and I hope is not stepping my bounds, was no taxation without representation. The Yankee flag flying in the background, woe is me kind of thing. But I know that with your influence in taxation, currency, and economics, that we're in good hands here.
I've also used that to good measure in the various Council of Counts meetings, so that's always a good one. But actually, I think that goes back to our point earlier, which is about what is good leadership. And if you have a situation where people are paying taxes, whether they're a member of the in-game community or the out-of-game community, if they're paying taxes, I think they need to understand what they are getting from those in exchange for their hard-earned Illyrian money. So I think that's definitely a theme that we have running.
Yep, a lot of communication and open communication with those areas. So Aedyn, Mr. Wolfgar, as the newly appointed Elder of Communication, first of your name, what are your expectations coming into this with a fresh set of eyes? What are some of the goals that you've set for yourself, things that you would like to do as the Elder of Communications? Yeah.
Well, communications is pretty close to what actually I specialize in professionally, which is things like marketing and PR as well as graphic design, and it's a pretty close. I see it as a pretty close parallel. For the Elder of Communications, that's handling a lot of things, which would be considered, marketing for our community, for the Conclave, or handling things that are happening within the community. You could almost consider it to be kind of like a community manager, although there are a few people who do a very good job at handling that role, which I think is good. Community management is a tough gig. As much as it might not seem like it to an outside observer, there is a lot of work that goes into it. So, yeah, only being here for a couple of weeks, haven't had a whole lot of chance to actually have big things happen yet. But yeah, there are some things that I would love to do and get involved in with even further. That I'm, some already been involved a little bit with helping to get our community Discord even more organized and efficient, so people are able to see like where information can be found on various things, like who is the respective elder of it might be whatever role it might be, or what are some of the public documents that the Conclave has on, say, something like taxation or citizenship. Making that information more available to people is something that I feel is pretty important. As well, because it influences not only people who are currently in the Conclave, but also people who are might have a package or considering joining the game and enjoy joining a community to play the game with. They're going to be out looking for which ones are available, and having a good public image presented to them, and having information easily available to them, so that they're able to have as many as their questions answered as possible, before even having to engage with something like, say, a recruiter. You might have a community recruiter or something, is important, because you can either capture someone within a few seconds of them looking at your marketing material, or you can lose them right away. And so my goal is to continue to manage and as well as improve the stuff that the Conclave already has out there. So that way, not only are people being able to understand what we're currently doing in our community, which is another aspect I want to. I haven't run this. I haven't run a. I have a plan that I want to run past Jen, but we haven't had the meeting yet, so I'm not going to say anything publicly. But I have plans that not only do I want to promote things that are already happening within the community, but also have some plans to try and bring even more good people in, and so that way they're able to experience the game with us.
Yes, yes, yes. More plans, plans. I imagine you have steepled fingers and ominous laughter.
Oh yes.
We very much look forward to seeing those plans reach the public sphere and seeing the benefits from them. I mean, both of you, the efforts that you put towards this community are definitely appreciated. I don't have any more questions for you two. We've gone through all the prepared questions and the media that we've created and prepared for this session. Is there anything near and dear to your hearts that you want to plug, you want to talk about quick before we get to our goodbyes?
I think we managed to work in most of our most near and dear aspects of the Conclave into our main presentation. Wouldn't you say, Thomas?
Yeah, I think so. I guess if I was to highlight two things just to close out, I think I would say first of all, if that sounds interesting to you, if you like the sound of being part of County Farrister, please do reach out to us. As I say, we're not actively recruiting until we really know fully what we can offer vis-a-vis domain select. But equally, if you think that's the sort of thing that I'm interested in, I would fit really well with that community. Please do reach out either to myself, Thomas Farrister, or to Aedyn Wolfgar. And I think the second piece for me would be really to reiterate the point about the Searing Plague event. Whether you are in the game at the moment, whether you are avidly following it and would like to get involved, or whether it's the first time you've heard about Chronicles of Elyria, it's a really, really great time to get involved in some of the pieces that are going on. So I'd really encourage people to check out that Searing Plague event.
Perfect, yeah. So before we get to our final goodbyes, I just want to give a quick reminder that we, the guests and the hosts of Face the Conclave, we hail from the Conclave of Aratar. If you or a friend of yours is part of the Aratarian community and wish to have a similar spotlight on your group, your school, your organization, your town, or your county, please reach out to Jedzia for scheduling. If you have a topic you'd like to talk about with the Illyrian community at large, be it crafting, politics, the economy, deviant lifestyles, PvP lifestyles, events similar to the Searing Plague event, reach out to me, Asbestos, and we'll put something together to discuss in this media form. A reminder that we hold these casts every Wednesday at 8 and Eastern and Sundays at 4 Eastern, and I encourage you to join in Twitch to discuss the topics of the interview. Like Farrister said, if you're not already involved in the Searing Plague event, please, look into it. Look for any way that you can be involved in the community, in the game, in the event. We want to be a healthy, active community, and if you're not already excited, we want to excite you further. If you're looking into information about the Searing Plague, it is available in the Vornir Discord, the Conclave Discord, and there's a number of YouTube videos, channels that have popped up around it, be it mechanically speaking or lore-wise, to entice you into participating. This has been Face the Conclave. I've been your host, Aspicis, along with our guests, Thomas Farrister and Aedyn Wolfgar. This has been Face the Conclave, and see you next time, folks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.